I discovered my husband was secretly draining our bank accounts and turning my stepchildren against me with lies. So, I threw him out and exposed every dark secret he tried to bury in front of a full courtroom. 3 years later, he showed up broken after a serious accident, asking me to take care of him. When I married Tom, I became the dependable figure for his children, the one who would readily drop everything to take his son to practice, the person who prepared every meal and folded every piece of laundry. He'd tell me his son needed help with homework, and I'd immediately assist. I was raised to aspire to be a good mother, told that my sacrifices would earn my family's affection. For 3 years with Tom, I embodied the devoted wife and nurturing stepmother. I stepped in when Tom was stressed. I even studied biology in my free time to help his daughter with exams. I even allowed Tom to present the children with allowance money that was actually mine, because he claimed they'd be more inclined to accept it from their real parent. Everything shifted one afternoon when I received the call. My best friend had been in a car accident and was gone. That night, through tears, I explained to Tom that I would need to fly to where she lived. I anticipated needing about a month to arrange the funeral, manage the details, and support her grieving parents. He initially appeared annoyed, even sighing and rolling his eyes, but eventually he nodded and told me to do what was necessary. I flew out the next morning, my heart heavy with grief. I expected Tom to manage things back home, but I was mistaken. Barely 2 weeks later, Tom began calling me daily, sighing deeply into the phone, complaining about the difficulty of managing the children without me. "Lisa, seriously, it's too much," he said. "I didn't sign up for doing everything alone." His words were like tiny knives. I kept apologizing, trying to explain how much I was hurting and that I wished I could be there with the family, but he didn't seem to comprehend or care. I began sending more money home, hoping to alleviate the burden, but it didn't help. Tom simply requested more. When I finally returned home after 3 weeks, a week earlier than intended, I was exhausted. Yet, despite everything I'd endured, I remembered my stepdaughter's sweet 16 was approaching. I decided to channel all my energy into planning the best surprise party possible. Perhaps then Tom would truly see the depth of my love for them. I immersed myself in the task. The venue was perfect, decorations flawless, and the cake was precisely what she had spoken about for months. That night, when the lights came on and everyone shouted surprise, her face lit up brighter than I had ever seen it. It felt like the first genuine family moment we'd ever shared. My heart swelled with joy. But then, a few minutes later, Tom stepped forward to give a speech. Initially, I smiled, proud and hopeful, thinking this day marked a new beginning. He thanked everyone for coming, praised the decorations, the planning, and the effort. But then he said something and my blood ran cold. He told everyone that this was no easy task, but that all the struggle he went through while organizing this was worth it to see his daughter smile. He never once mentioned me. If anything, he even included a sly dig at me, claiming he had no help from anyone when planning because of some people's personal issues. When he finished speaking, everyone applauded Tom, his daughter hugging him, and people congratulating him, while I stood there, invisible and betrayed. That night, I watched Tom laughing with the guests, basking in the credit for work he didn't do. My stepdaughter called him the best person ever, thanking him repeatedly. Not once did she glance my way. I couldn't speak, I couldn't cry. I just stood there, numb. Afterwards, Tom found me standing alone in the kitchen. "What's wrong?" I looked at him, disbelief burning in my throat. "How could you?" I whispered. He shrugged dismissively. "Come on, Lisa, don't make this about you." In the days after the party, my sadness deepened into an overwhelming depression. Tom distanced himself further, openly calling me unstable and claiming I was disrupting the family. I isolated myself in our room, finally realizing Tom had weaponized my affection and generosity. He manipulated my money, my love, my time, and then discarded me when he no longer needed me. That realization incinerated the fog I had been living in. I couldn't continue like this. Quietly, in the privacy of my isolation, I made a decision. Tom was not going to escape accountability. I was done being invisible. I was done being the accommodating wife. I opened my laptop, fingers trembling with a mixture of rage and determination. For 3 years, I had been silently bearing the weight of this family, while Tom claimed all the recognition. No more. I began documenting everything, creating a detailed spreadsheet of every penny I had given Tom over the years. The amounts were staggering when presented before me, thousands upon thousands of dollars from my personal savings and earnings. I tracked every instance he had taken credit for my work, from the biology tutoring sessions with my stepdaughter to the countless school projects I had helped his son complete. The list grew longer with each memory that surfaced. My fingers flew across the keyboard as 3 years of memories poured out. I hadn't realized how much I had been carrying until I saw it all written down. The screen blurred as tears welled in my eyes, not from sadness, but from anger at myself for allowing this to happen for so long. I checked our joint bank account and felt my stomach drop. Tom had been withdrawing large amounts of cash, money I had earned, without telling me. The transactions were vaguely labeled as household expenses, but the timing coincided with weekends he claimed to be working. I dug deeper, pulling up credit card statements. There were charges for expensive restaurants on nights he claimed to be working late, jewelry stores when it wasn't anyone's birthday, and hotel rooms in our own city. My hands shook as I took screenshots of everything. This wasn't just about him taking credit for a birthday party. This was systematic financial abuse. Through the bedroom door, I could hear Tom's voice downstairs, laughing with his kids, my stepchildren, the ones I had helped with homework, driven to practices, and comforted when they were sad. They had no idea what their father was truly like. I needed proof they couldn't ignore. I needed allies. I needed a plan. The next morning, I left the bedroom for the first time in days. Tom looked surprised to see me dressed and putting on makeup. He barely glanced up from his phone as he asked if I was feeling better. I forced a smile and told him I was going to see my therapist. This was a falsehood. I didn't have a therapist. But Tom nodded, clearly relieved I was leaving the house and not bothering him. I drove to the bank first, the morning air crisp against my skin as I walked through the parking lot. Inside, the teller's eyes widened when I told her what I needed. She seemed shocked that I wanted to see all transactions from the past 3 years, but I insisted. 2 hours later, I left with a new account solely in my name and a folder full of transaction records that confirmed my suspicions. Tom had been systematically draining our shared resources while I grieved for my friend. Next stop, my office. I hadn't been to work in weeks, having taken bereavement leave that had stretched longer than planned. My boss, Janet, looked up in surprise when I walked in, her concern evident in the way she immediately stood and came around her desk. I closed her office door and sat down, the leather chair cool against my back. I explained how I had been the one financially supporting my family, while Tom claimed credit, showing her the bank statements as evidence. Her expression hardened as I talked, especially when I revealed how Tom had been using company resources to print materials for his side business, something I discovered in the bank statements. Janet helped me access my work emails, where I found messages from Tom pretending to be me, asking for advances on my salary that went straight to his personal account. The betrayal cut deeper with each discovery. By the time I left work, I had the company's legal team looking into Tom's actions and a promise from Janet that my job was secure. The afternoon sun warmed my face as I drove to my stepdaughter Mia's school. I'd helped her study biology for months, and her teacher, Mr. Reynolds, knew me well. He greeted me warmly when I entered his classroom after school, commenting on how wonderfully Mia had done on her last exam. I asked him something important, explaining how Tom had been taking credit for my help with Mia's schoolwork. Mr. Reynolds frowned, his brow furrowing as he told me that Tom had claimed at parent-teacher night that he'd been the one helping her study, even saying he'd been brushing up on his biology. My heart sank at this confirmation of yet another falsehood. Mr. Reynolds even mentioned that Tom had asked him to write a recommendation letter for some community award, Father of the Year or something similar. The irony made me feel physically ill. I asked if he would be willing to write down what he had just told me about Tom claiming he helped Mia, and he agreed without hesitation. Next was Mia's best friend's mom, Stephanie. She'd helped me plan the Sweet 16 party, ordering decorations, and picking up a cake when I was overwhelmed with grief. When I arrived at her house, the familiar scent of cinnamon and apples wafted from her kitchen. She'd been meaning to call me, she said, about what Tom had said at the party. The relief of someone having noticed his behavior brought fresh tears to my eyes. I told her I needed her help gathering evidence of Tom's behavior. Stephanie didn't hesitate, immediately offering her text messages about the party planning and videos she'd taken of me setting up that day. Her kindness was like a balm to my wounded spirit. By evening, I had a folder full of evidence, financial records, witness statements, text messages, emails, and photos. I'd contacted a lawyer who specialized in divorce cases involving financial abuse. I'd spoken with my stepson Jake's soccer coach, who confirmed I was the one who always brought him to practice, not Tom. I felt stronger with each person who confirmed what I already knew. Tom had been lying to everyone, taking credit for my work and my money. When I got home, the house was filled with the aroma of takeout pizza. Tom was waiting in the living room, his face darkening as he demanded to know where I'd been all day. I kept my voice light as I mentioned running errands, hiding my folder of evidence in my purse. He immediately complained that dinner wasn't made and Jake needed help with his science project. I nodded, falling back into my old patterns temporarily. I needed more time before I made my move. That night, I helped Jake with his project, a model of the solar system. The kitchen table was covered with styrofoam balls, paint, and glitter. As we worked, I casually asked if he remembered who helped him with his volcano project last year, the one that won first prize. Jake looked confused, his small brow furrowing, as he said his dad had helped. My heart sank as I gently reminded him that I had stayed up all night helping him build it while his dad was on a business trip. Jake frowned, mentioning that his dad had told everyone at the science fair that he did it. The realization in Jake's eyes was painful to witness. Over the next week, I continued gathering evidence while pretending everything was normal. I cooked, cleaned, and helped with homework, the familiar routines now feeling like a performance. But I also had quiet conversations with the kids, gently reminding them of times I'd been there for them that Tom had taken credit for. Mia was resistant at first, insisting her dad had always been there for them. When I asked who helped her study for her biology final, she automatically said it was her dad. I reminded her that her dad didn't know the difference between mitosis and meiosis, that I had learned biology specifically for her and quizzed her every night for weeks. A flicker of doubt crossed her face as she started to question what her father had told her. Meanwhile, I met with my lawyer, Caroline, who reviewed my evidence with growing concern. She told me this was one of the clearest cases of financial abuse she'd seen, and that the way Tom had alienated me from his children by taking credit for my contributions could be used in our case. I felt a strange mix of validation and sadness as I asked what came next. Caroline outlined our strategy, filing for divorce, requesting financial records going back 5 years, and preparing for Tom to fight dirty. I took a deep breath, feeling ready for the battle ahead. The next day, I waited until the kids left for school, the house falling into silence as the door closed behind them. Tom was still home, working on his laptop at the kitchen table, the morning light casting shadows across his face. I placed the divorce papers in front of him, the sound of paper against wood seeming unnaturally loud in the quiet room. Tom barely glanced up, asking what I'd put in front of him. When I calmly told him they were divorce papers, he laughed dismissively, not believing I would actually leave him. I stood my ground, explaining I had evidence of everything he'd done, the financial abuse, the lies, taking credit for my work with the kids. His face darkened, his confidence faltering, as he threatened that no one would believe me, that he'd made sure everyone knew I was unstable. I pulled out my phone, showing him texts from Stephanie about the party, emails from Jake's teachers confirming I was the one who always helped with homework, bank statements showing how I'd supported the family while he spent money on himself. The color drained from his face as he realized I had proof of his deception. Tom's final defense was to claim the kids would never choose me over him, emphasizing he was their father. I simply told him we would see. But either way, I was done being invisible. I walked out of the kitchen, leaving him staring at the divorce papers. The war had just begun, but for the first time in years, I felt visible. I felt real. And I wasn't going to disappear again. That feeling lasted exactly 3 hours. I was meeting with Caroline at a cafe downtown, the bitter aroma of coffee mingling with the sweet scent of pastries, when my phone exploded with notifications. Tom had been busy texting everyone we knew, including Mia and Jake, telling them I was having a severe mental breakdown and they shouldn't believe anything I said. He claimed I'd been fabricating stories due to my deteriorating mental state following my friend's death. My hands trembled as I showed Caroline the messages, the screen blurring through my tears. She reviewed the texts with a professional calm, assuring me this was actually good for our case. He was panicking, she explained, and these messages were pure defamation we could use against him. I wasn't so sure, especially when Mia called, her voice thick with tears. Tom had told her I was trying to take her away from him, that I was making up lies because I was sick in the head. I tried explaining calmly, but she hung up before I could finish, leaving me staring at my phone in despair. When I returned home that evening, the golden sunset doing nothing to warm the chill I felt, I discovered the locks had been changed. I stood on my own doorstep, key useless in my hand, as Tom opened the door just wide enough to speak through the gap. His mock sympathy as he told me the kids didn't want to see me right now made my stomach turn. When I insisted this was my house too, he smiled coldly and told me to check the deed before closing the door in my face. I called Caroline immediately, the night air growing colder around me as I waited for her response. She arranged for an emergency hearing the next morning, her voice reassuring me that Tom's actions were only strengthening our case. I spent the night at Stephanie's house, barely sleeping as I wondered what else Tom was telling the kids. The guest bed was comfortable but unfamiliar, and my mind raced with worries about Mia and Jake. The judge was unsympathetic to Tom's tactics and ordered him to let me back into the house. But the damage was done. When I returned home, the kids wouldn't look at me, their eyes averted as if I were a stranger. They'd been thoroughly poisoned by Tom's lies, and the distance between us felt insurmountable. That night, I overheard Tom in Mia's room, his voice soft and manipulative as he told her I'd always been jealous of their relationship, that I couldn't handle their special bond, and that's why I was making up stories. I felt sick listening to his manipulation, retreating to the guest bedroom where I'd been ordered to stay by the temporary custody arrangement. The sheets were cold and unfamiliar, and sleep eluded me once again. The next morning, I found Jake making his own lunch for school, his small hands struggling with the sandwich bread. When I offered to help, he flinched away from me, his eyes wide with fear. He told me his dad had said I might try to hurt them, the words cutting deeper than any physical wound could. I assured him gently that I would never hurt him, ever. He looked at me, confused and scared, asking why his dad would say such things if they weren't true. I explained that his father was afraid of the truth coming out and asked Jake to think about who really took care of him, who made his lunch every day, helped with homework, and attended his soccer games. Jake admitted quietly that it was me, and when I asked who took credit for all of it, he whispered, "Dad." It was a small victory, but it gave me hope that the truth could still reach them. Caroline advised me to start gathering more concrete evidence of Tom's behavior, explaining we needed to show a pattern rather than relying on my word against his. I began keeping a detailed journal of everything Tom did and said, the pages filling quickly with instances of manipulation and lies. I installed a voice recording app on my phone and captured his threats when the kids weren't around, the digital files becoming a record of his true nature. I photographed the empty fridge when he claimed to have gone grocery shopping but spent the money elsewhere, the barren shelves a stark contrast to his claims. 2 weeks into this uncomfortable living arrangement, I discovered Tom had been emptying our joint accounts, the balances dwindling to almost nothing. I immediately called Caroline, who filed an emergency motion to freeze the assets. The judge granted it, but not before Tom had transferred nearly $30,000 to an account I couldn't access, money I had earned through long hours and dedication. Caroline assured me this looked terrible for him in court, but that didn't help my immediate financial situation. I was living in my own house as a virtual prisoner with barely enough money for essentials since Tom had taken control of all our finances. The turning point came unexpectedly one evening. I was helping Jake with his math homework. He'd sought me out specifically, a small but meaningful gesture, when Mia stormed in, her face flushed with anger. She snapped that her dad said I wasn't supposed to be alone with Jake. Jake protested that we were just doing homework, adding that his dad didn't know how to do fractions. Mia insisted that her father had told her I was trying to turn them against him. I stayed calm, assuring her I would never do that because I love them both too much. She accused me of lying about her dad, tears welling in her eyes. I spoke quietly, telling her I wasn't lying and that deep down I thought she knew that. I reminded her of her biology test from the previous year, the one she'd earned an A+ on. When I asked who had stayed up with her every night for 2 weeks helping her study, she admitted reluctantly that it was me. I then asked who had taken credit for it at the parent-teacher conference. She didn't answer, but I could see the conflict in her eyes as she began to question her father's version of events. After she left, Jake looked up at me, his small face serious, as he observed that his dad lied a lot. I nodded sadly, confirming his observation. When he asked if that was why I was divorcing his father, I admitted it was part of the reason, but mostly because Tom didn't treat me with respect, and that wasn't what love looked like. Jake nodded thoughtfully and returned to his fractions, the moment of honesty creating a small bridge between us. The next day, I received a text from Mr. Reynolds, Mia's biology teacher. Tom had shown up at school, demanding to see Mia's records and insisting that Mr. Reynolds retract his statement about who had helped Mia study. When Mr. Reynolds refused, Tom had caused a scene so disruptive that the school called security. This incident became a turning point in our case. The school principal, Dr. Martinez, called me directly to discuss what had happened, her concern evident in her voice. I explained the situation, and she was sympathetic, confirming they had always known I was the one involved in Mia's education since Tom rarely attended conferences until recently. Dr. Martinez agreed to document the incident and Tom's sudden interest in claiming credit for Mia's academic success, providing another piece of evidence for our case. That evening, Tom came home furious, his face flushed and his movements jerky with barely contained rage. He cornered me in the kitchen, jabbing his finger in my face as he accused me of turning everyone against him. I stood my ground, even as my heart raced with fear, telling him the truth would speak for itself. Tom laughed bitterly, saying no one would believe me over him, that I was nothing without him, a pathetic, desperate woman so eager to be a mother she'd take another woman's leftovers. The words were designed to wound, to make me doubt myself, as I had for years. But this time they didn't land. I recognized his tactics now, the way he used insults to maintain control. I asked calmly if that was the best he could do, pointing out that insults didn't change the facts or what he'd done. His face contorted with rage as he threatened to destroy me before letting me take his kids. I reminded him they weren't possessions, that I'd never tried to take them from him. I just wanted them to know the truth. He stormed out, slamming the door so hard a picture fell off the wall and shattered, the glass tinkling across the hardwood floor. The kids appeared in the doorway, wide-eyed and frightened by the noise. I assured them everything would be okay, though my hands shook as I cleaned up the broken glass, the shards reflecting the fractured state of our family. But things got worse before they got better. Tom began telling neighbors and friends that I was abusive to the children, that I'd threatened him physically. Some believed him, their suspicious glances cutting me when I passed them in the grocery store or at school functions. Others, who had seen me caring for the kids over the years, were skeptical of his sudden claims. Stephanie became my strongest ally, telling anyone who would listen about how I'd planned Mia's entire birthday party while Tom took all the credit. She showed people the texts and photos proving it, her loyalty unwavering in the face of Tom's lies. Other parents from Jake's soccer team started coming forward too, confirming I was the one who always brought him to practice while Tom was nowhere to be seen. Tom's narrative was beginning to crumble, and he knew it, his desperation growing with each person who questioned his version of events. One afternoon, I came home to find Tom going through my laptop, which I'd forgotten to take with me that morning. When I demanded to know what he was doing, he didn't even try to hide it, claiming he was looking for evidence of my affairs. I was stunned by the accusation, having never been unfaithful during our marriage. He smirked, telling me he'd just planted messages that would be enough to lose me custody. I lunged for the laptop, but he held it away, taunting me that it was too late. He'd already sent the fabricated evidence to his email. I called Caroline immediately, my voice shaking with anger and fear. She advised me to file a police report for unauthorized access to my computer and potential fabrication of evidence. The officer who took my statement seemed bored and skeptical, his pen moving lazily across the form, but at least there was now an official record of Tom's threat. That night I couldn't sleep, the ceiling fan spinning above me like my racing thoughts. Tom was escalating, becoming more desperate and dangerous with each passing day. I needed to protect myself and somehow reach the kids through his web of lies before it was too late. The next morning, I found Mia sitting alone at the kitchen table, staring at her phone, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. When I asked if everything was okay, she looked up, her vulnerability momentarily overriding her anger toward me. She told me Mrs. Chin, her piano teacher, had texted her. I had completely forgotten about the piano lessons in the chaos of recent events. Mia turned her phone so I could see the message, asking if she was still coming to the recital the following week, mentioning that I had paid for the whole semester in advance and said she'd been practicing hard. Mia's voice was quiet as she told me her dad had claimed he paid for her lessons as a special gift to her. I sat down beside her, the morning sunlight streaming through the window between us, and apologized for the confusion, acknowledging how painful and confusing this must be for her. She whispered that her father had lied to her about something so small and seemingly insignificant, questioning why he would do that. I admitted I didn't know his reasons, but emphasized it wasn't about the money, it was about making sure she knew how much she was loved. Mia looked at me, really looked at me. For the first time in weeks, her defenses momentarily lowered. She asked if I had really learned biology just to help her study, her voice small and uncertain. I nodded, describing how I'd bought textbooks, watched YouTube videos, and even joined an online study group despite her father teasing me about wasting my time. She seemed to absorb this, though she didn't say anything else. But she didn't pull away when I squeezed her hand, a tiny gesture that felt monumental after weeks of rejection. Later that day, I received a call from the bank. The representative's voice concerned as she informed me of suspicious activity on one of my credit cards, the one I thought Tom didn't know about. He'd somehow obtained the number and maxed it out, buying expensive electronics that were nowhere to be found in our house. I reported the fraud and changed all my passwords, but the damage was done. My credit was in shambles, and I was running out of financial resources to fight him, the weight of his financial abuse threatening to crush my resistance. Caroline suggested we expedite the divorce proceedings, explaining that Tom was trying to break me financially, and we needed to get this in front of a judge as soon as possible. The court date was set for 3 weeks away, the circled date on my calendar both a deadline and a promise of potential freedom. In the meantime, I had to somehow survive living with Tom while protecting myself and trying to maintain my relationship with the kids, each day a careful navigation of emotional landmines. Jake was coming around more quickly than Mia, his younger perspective perhaps less influenced by years of Tom's manipulation. He started seeking me out for help with homework again and even asked if I would come to his soccer game that weekend, explaining that his dad was too busy but he was starting forward and really wanted someone to see. I promised I wouldn't miss it for anything, his small smile warming my heart for the first time in weeks. Tom was furious when he found out I was going to Jake's game, his control over the narrative threatened by my presence at a public event. He cornered me in the laundry room, blocking the door with his body, the smell of detergent almost suffocating in the small space. He growled at me to stay away from his son's game, his posture menacing. When I replied that Jake had asked me to come, trying to step around him, Tom grabbed my arm, his fingers digging in painfully. He warned me not to push him, his voice low and threatening. I looked down at his hand on my arm, then back at his face, telling him firmly to let go of me. He released me with a shove that sent me stumbling back against the washing machine, the metal edge digging into my back. He threatened that this wasn't over before storming out, leaving me shaken but more determined than ever. I took photos of the bruises forming on my arm, the purple marks stark against my skin, and sent them to Caroline, who immediately filed for a restraining order. It was granted the next day, forcing Tom to move out of the house temporarily. The kids were confused and upset by this sudden development, having been told by their father that I was lying about him hurting me, that I'd probably bruised myself to frame him. Mia believed him without question, her loyalty to her father unwavering despite the cracks in his facade. Jake wasn't sure what to believe, his young mind struggling to reconcile the father he loved with the evidence before him. That night, as I tucked him in, the familiar ritual bringing comfort to us both, he asked directly if his dad had really hurt me. I showed him the bruises, now dark purple against my skin, explaining gently that it was never okay for someone to hurt you, no matter who they were. Jake's eyes filled with tears as he repeated his father's claim that I was trying to take them away from him. I assured him that wasn't true, that I would never do that. I just wanted them both to know the truth about what had been happening. When he asked what the truth was, I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. I explained that I loved him and Mia very much, that I tried my best to be a good stepmom to them, but that their dad and I couldn't be married anymore because he didn't treat me with respect. Jake nodded slowly, making the connection to his father taking credit for things I did. He mentioned he'd told Mia about how I was the one who always helped with his homework, but she had gotten angry with him for saying so. I explained that Mia was having a hard time right now, that it was difficult to learn someone you love and trust has been lying to you. Jake hugged me tightly, declaring he believed me and would help Mia believe me too, his simple loyalty bringing tears to my eyes. The restraining order gave me some breathing room, the house feeling lighter without Tom's oppressive presence. But he wasn't done fighting. He filed an emergency motion claiming I was alienating the children from him and requested full custody, the legal maneuver a transparent attempt to regain control. The hearing was set for the following week, and while Caroline assured me we had a strong case with the evidence we'd gathered, I was terrified of losing the kids after everything we'd been through together. The day before the hearing, Mia came to me, her posture hesitant but determined. She held out her phone, saying she needed to show me something. It was a text from Tom, instructing her to tell the judge that I never helped her with anything and that she was scared to be alone with me. My heart sank at this blatant attempt to manipulate the legal process through his own child. When I asked if he had been coaching her on what to say, Mia nodded, tears streaming down her face. She admitted he called her every night with things to say about me, but they weren't true, and she didn't want to lie anymore. I hugged her close, relief washing over me like a warm wave, assuring her she didn't have to lie, just tell the truth, whatever that was. She whispered that the truth was I had always been there for her, and she was sorry she hadn't seen it sooner, her words healing something broken inside me. The custody hearing the next day was intense, the courtroom's formal atmosphere adding weight to every word spoken. Tom arrived with an expensive lawyer who painted me as unstable and manipulative, presenting the fabricated evidence of affairs that Caroline quickly challenged, pointing out inconsistencies in the timestamps and writing style. When it was our turn, we presented bank records showing I had financially supported the family, while Tom spent money on himself, documentation from teachers and coaches confirming I was the one involved in the children's activities, recordings of Tom's threats, and photos of the bruises he'd left on my arm. The evidence was damning. But the most powerful testimony came from Mia and Jake themselves. Despite Tom's coaching, they told the judge the truth, that I was the one who helped with homework, attended their events, and took care of them when they were sick, while Tom often took credit for things I had done. Mia even brought her biology notebook, showing the judge my handwriting in the margins where I'd helped her study, telling him I had learned biology just to help her while her dad didn't even know what DNA stood for. The judge listened carefully to everything, his expression giving nothing away, then made his decision. I was granted temporary primary custody, with Tom allowed supervised visitation twice a week. The ruling was a vindication of everything I'd been fighting for. Tom was livid, his face contorted with rage as he cornered me outside the courtroom, hissing that this wasn't over, not by a long shot. I replied calmly that it was indeed over. He could no longer manipulate the truth or the people around him. As we walked to the car, Mia slipped her hand into mine, the simple gesture more meaningful than any words could be. She apologized for not believing me, her voice small but sincere. I assured her it was okay, that her dad was very convincing and it's hard to believe someone you love would lie to you. Jake asked from my other side if we were going to be okay, his young face serious with concern. I squeezed both their hands, promising that yes, we would be. It might be difficult for a while, but we would be just fine. That night, as the kids slept peacefully for the first time in weeks, their faces relaxed in the soft glow of their nightlights, I sat at the kitchen table looking through old photo albums. There I was at every school event, every birthday, every milestone, always in the background while Tom took center stage, my presence a shadow behind his spotlight. I had been invisible for so long, my contributions erased or claimed by someone else, that seeing myself in these photos was like rediscovering a person I'd forgotten existed. My phone buzzed with a text from Caroline, bringing great news. The judge had expedited our divorce proceedings, setting a court date in just 2 weeks. Tom's financial deception meant I would likely get a favorable settlement, the legal system finally recognizing the years of abuse I'd endured. I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in years. The war wasn't completely over. Tom would never give up easily. But the major battles had been won. The truth had come out. The kids knew who had really been there for them all along. And I was finally, gloriously visible.